Okay, so this is just going to be a very quick video. Going to try and keep this under 10 minutes. We're just going to spend some time on the Mac. I'm going to show you some sort of general key commands that I use, how I've sort of configured my workspace and how the system is generally configured. There are a ton of these videos out there, but this is kind of done with the contextualization of music production in the keyframe, so to speak. So there are loads of these videos out there, but this one is up to date, so to speak. So we are currently using MacOS Monterey, which is version 12.5.1. And the system that I am demoing this on is a 2021 14-inch MacBook Pro, and we're running the Apple M1 Max chip with 64 gigs of RAM. If you did want to get to this menu, you just got to go up to your top corner here, click your Apple logo, and go About This Mac. And then within there, you've got a whole bunch of useful information. Your overview tab will give you kind of like your system kind of baseline specs, if you like. But within here, you can configure your displays. I'm running 2 displays. You can look at the storage that your computer is using, what is free in terms of this side and what is used in terms of that side. And if you give the Mac a little bit more time to kind of populate, it will start to kind of break up what is potentially using your space the most. And if you click Manage, you can delve into that and it will tell you even more information about how you could potentially optimize your storage, what's using the majority of your space. In my case, it's applications, but even sort of useful things such as there is 2.6 gig in my bin. So that can there's something that can disappear straight away. In terms of hard drives, I keep a lot of my samples on separate drives. So if we come down to the dock window, which is at the bottom here, I hide my dock, and I notice a lot of people do not hide their dock. I'll come to talk about the dock in a second, but let's just stick with this kind of hard disk space, so to speak. If we click Finder, this is the equivalent of a My Computer window for any Windows users out there. But here you can see on the left-hand side, this is kind of how I've configured my workspace, so to speak. So a lot of my work lives on this work hard drive. So I've got all my university lectures and all my kind of planning and sessions within here. And here's all the kind of Aurora Eclipse Productions kind of assets, portfolios, work in progress, etc., etc., etc. I like this kind of drop-down view, but you can change that within these windows here. So you can change how you're organizing it if you want it to be by name. And we're going to Dropbox. Or if you want it to be by kind, so if by a folder or by a document or by a Pro Tools session or date you added it. I tend to just go by name because I want it just basically in alphabetical order, A to Z. And then you've got this kind of icons view, which gives it, well, icons. You can do it as a list, which I tend to use the most. Columns, which is useful if you're kind of jumping through hierarchical windows. So say you're in films here and you were on a list view and you wanted to jump back. You could click this back arrow, but I just choose to activate then the columns view, and then I can jump back on myself and scroll with the trackpad or the mouse, left or right, in order to do that. If you want to find out some information about a file, so say for instance we've got this, let's do a bit of music. Say we've got some music here, we've got a WAV. Let's just take this file here. If I do Command and I, which is called Get Info, this will start telling us more information about the track. So we can see here that the sample rate is 44.1. It's a 16-bit sample rate. When it was created, when it was modified, where it lives, etc., etc. So that's something you use all the time on your stems. So you can also get to that by left-clicking and literally going Get Info, and that same window will come up. There are a couple of things that you perhaps want to configure when you first come to your Mac. So coming back to that conversation I had around the dock, if we go to your Apple logo and then to System Preferences here, this lovely window comes up, and here you can configure many, many things about your computer. So let's say we did go into our dock. So our dock will be hiding somewhere in this list. I'm sure some of you have seen it already, but for some reason why can't I see it? Dock and menu bar, there it is. So here you've got your magnification, your size, and like I say, I personally hide my dock. So where it says here automatically hide or show dock, if I click that, my dock's now there all the time. and I could have it there all the time and massive like this. You see a lot of people working on the Mac like this. It doesn't work for me personally. I do not want to see my dock, so I want my dock to be quite small, and I want it to be magnified when I scroll over it. So when I go over the dock to see certain applications, it basically enlarges the icon for me, but at default it's quite small. So I go for a large magnification with a small dock, and I want it hidden because I want my workspace to be as much open as possible for me to run Logic, Pro Tools, Ableton, whatever it is I may well be working in. Talking a little bit about the mouse, if you guys are using a trackpad or a mouse, there are various options you can configure. So if we go into trackpad, for instance, secondary click on the Mac tends to almost be off by default, which it kind of sucks in my opinion. You probably want your secondary click on. So your secondary click on a trackpad is with 2 fingers. So you'll put 2 fingers down on the trackpad to right click, as is demoed by this image here. Or you can say, I want you to literally do me a right click from the bottom right hand corner of the trackpad or the bottom left hand corner of the trackpad. If you're using a mouse with your Mac, then you've got to also turn that on. So for me, my secondary click is literally on the right hand side of the mouse, again as demoed within the picture. I find that fairly useful. You want to, I set my dock up in such a way that I've got my downloads at the end here, I've got my applications at the end here. I used to kind of pin my working files. Now I don't. I'll literally go into Finder, and then I'll go to my most recently used files from the left-hand side here in Favorites. So let's say, for instance, I wanted my portfolio to live in this side of the Finder window. I could literally drag portfolio over and just let go of it here. So that's almost like a quick shortcut, and you can click and drag these around as much as you want. So if I then clicked on here, it would take me into my portfolio window. I'm probably going to list it because I prefer it like that. And if you don't want it, you can just right click and say remove from sidebar, and it will disappear. In the same way with applications. So I've got a bunch of kind of like, you know, my most used apps, so to speak, in the bottom of the dock. So say you come into this window and you go to your applications. And let's just say I want Authy. Authy is a thing that I use to kind of verify bits of software or like log into my bank and things like that. Say I want that in the window, I can just left click it and drag it down to the dock. It creates a little space for me. I let go of it. Authy is now basically populated within my dock, and it will live there forever until I choose to either click and remove it just by literally clicking out the dock, dragging it to where that remove icon comes up and letting go. It's now gone. You can also say you open an application. So let's say, let's try and find something I haven't got pinned. Podcasts, I haven't got pinned. So if I open podcasts, you'll notice that it's now on the right hand side of the dock. So these are almost your 3 latest used apps, so to speak. We can right click on that and say options, keep in dock, which then moves it from this right hand side of this kind of splitter into our dock. And then we can move that around wherever we may want it to go. I tend to use Spotify podcasts, so sorry, Apple, I don't want you in my dock. So I'm going to remove you. He says, gone. Right, no, it's not, because it's still open. Look, you can tell if something's still open because it's got a little dot underneath it. So anything that's actually open on the computer will have a dot. Finder is always open, so it's always going to have a dot. So let's left click on this and we're going to go quit. Sorry, not left click, that was a right click. And then it's gone. Ladiocast is open. Ladiocast is potentially something that you will want to use when you're recording your vlogs, or if you're recording any vlogs. So here you can see my microphone's coming in on channel 7 on my Quantum, and it's going out to this thing called Black Hole. Don't worry too much about that right now because there's another video on that, but you'll need to do that when you do your vlogs, or anyone out there listening who wants to record vlogs. It's a useful thing to do. In terms of folders, I tend to use these stacks. So here I've got PDF documents. I've got screenshots. There's normally some sort of audio file, but I've actually kind of cleaned up. Look, there's one audio file and one video from my podcast. Normally there's a fair few more than that, where I'm being sort of disorganized, so to speak, because I do tend to use my desktop as a bit of a dumping ground. I tend to put my Logic current sessions into this Logic current folders, and my Pro Tools sessions into this is Pro Tools current sessions. When I'm working on them, they live on my desktop. And then once I'm done with them, I archive them off onto my work drive, which is also backed up by Dropbox. So my work drive lives here, and it's got Dropbox on it. So say I go into my business there, and then I go to portfolio. Here's where I'd start putting, say, bounces of music scores, WAVs and MP3s, cues. I'm a little bit behind because I don't have all my cues in here yet. There's about 15 missing. I need to sort that out. But so yeah, I use my desktop as like a working kind of place, and then I tend to archive things off into this folder when I'm ready. If you want to make a new folder, you can just right click on your mouse or your trackpad, and you can then go new folder. You can also come up to your menu bar at the top and go file, new folder. This lovely window comes up, and if you've noticed there, it's highlighted. So that means we can give it a name. So let's just give it a test. UON test, there you go. So now you've got another folder here. You can drag various things into the folder. You can drag this into other folders by just left clicking on it, holding it. So I want to put that on the desktop. There it is, it's on the desktop. Let's say we open up Logic. This is another really useful command, guys. If you do Apple space or command and space in the new speak, this spotlight search comes up. I use this spotlight search constantly all the time to open anything from Safari. I can open even an email or a piece of music just by searching. So I put my name in there. It will find emails. It will find all sorts of different stuff to do with my name. One of which, if you go show search in Finder, say here, right at the bottom there, this has found everything that's contained in my name, and including recent pictures, say, and then it's even given me the location of where that pitch actually lives. So really useful. If you forget the key command, which again is command and space, you can also use the search bar up here, and that will bring up the same thing called Spotlight Search. It's a very, very useful feature. While we're on this subject, a new thing to Monterey. See this here? This kind of fadery looking kind of brightness setting, it looks like. That orange there means something's being recorded, aka my voice. But you can now change your outputs within this window just by literally clicking onto there, and then within sound you can choose this option, and that will give you anything that can basically be used as an output setting for your sound. Very cool indeed. Outside of that, you'd have to go back into your system preferences. You'd have to go into your sound option, and then you could choose your input. So we can see me talking here through the Quantum coming in on Thunderbolt. Output, again, Quantum Thunderbolt, but nothing's actually coming out that way. So that's how you configure your sound option, so to speak. Another window is the audio MIDI setup window, which I have got docked. How would we get to that? Well, a quick way again is to use the spotlight search, so command and space, and then audio MIDI. Just type audio, or click your search magnifying glass audio MIDI. Anyone in the music production kind of realm will use this window at some point, because it's how you configure your ins and outs in terms of your interfaces. So here's my sound card, all my inputs, all my outputs, how the clock is set. We'll talk about this in the lectures, so don't worry too much about that. But it's your kind of interoperability, if you like, or how your computer's speaking across both your system and your sound card, where your ins are, where your outs are. So I've got different options set for different purposes. Again, we'll go into this in another video because you're going to need to know it for your vlogs. And that's going to be with Black Hole, as opposed to something called Soundflower, which kind of works and kind of doesn't. On the newer Macs, you need to use Black Hole to record your voice and your screen, which is exactly what I'm using now to record this video. That's kind of, you can configure these dock items. So say, for instance, you go into here again, and you've got obviously I've chosen to keep my, I didn't want to do that. I've chosen to keep my battery there as a percentage, but all this is configurable. If you go back into your settings window, dock and menu bar, all these controls, you can say, well, actually, for my Wi-Fi controls, I actually want to show it in the menu bar. So if I click that, it's now showing my Wi-Fi here, as opposed to being within that option there. So if I unselect that, the Wi-Fi menu you now see has disappeared, but it is living within here. So it's just a way of keeping things a little bit more organized. He says that. Where's it gone? Okay, it's in the menu bar there. Turn it off. Yeah, it's here. Got your Wi-Fi option there. So I try and keep things kind of locked away, so to speak, so I don't have too much of a busy menu bar. I do a lot of different things. I do video editing. I do obviously screen capture work and music work. So this changes depending on what I'm doing. So right now, obviously, I've got my light on and my camera on. That is not always connected. So yeah, I personally try and keep this as clean cut as possible. And this is a really cool way of doing that. So, you know, you've got your sound icon, so show a menu bar when it's active. Or you could say, I always want you to show in my menu bar. So now that sound icon is always going to be there, and you can change your output whenever you want it to be so. Probably something I'll actually move to always be kind of conscious there. But again, you can say, well, only show it when it's active. Nothing's really playing now, so it's not active, so to speak. But if we started playing some music or doing something on the screen, it would do that. So configure this, guys, to however you perhaps want it to be. It's got, I mean, focused icons are, focus modes are really useful, guys. Like I set some for personal, work, when I'm asleep, when I'm lecturing, and when I'm driving. So if I'm lecturing, I'm turning that on, which turns on that focus mode across all my devices. And I don't get disturbed except by people who perhaps might need to disturb me, you know, family members, other lecturers, etc., etc. But generally speaking, the outside world can't get hold of me. And then when I've got it set to work, that's when I'm composing. And then only kind of like composery people can get hold of me, etc., etc. Personal, no one's getting a hold of me. Driving, only certain people can get hold of me. And then do not disturb is like, no one's talking to me. So that's a good thing to use for your creativity. If you're jumping in to be wanting to do something and you don't want to be disturbed, or you only want to be disturbed by certain people, then I would recommend turning that on. File management, again, something we will come on to, but you're going to need to know how to rename your files. So say, for instance, I've got this folder here, which is literally just called Untitled. I can simply click on it and press Enter, which then highlights it, and I can name it. I can click on the item and then click in where it says name, and that will also allow me to rename it. I can right click on it and say rename. Name 1.2, and I believe you can even go to file as well, and you can go to rename. So I'm just going to go back to Untitled. Oh, I can't type today. So there are various different ways of naming things, right? If you're in, let's say we're doing a Word document. So again, I'm just going to do my command and spacebar to bring up my Spotlight search. Let's do a blank document. So I'm going to go test 1, 2, 3. Saving options can be a little bit weird across the board on Mac and PC nowadays, but if we go to basically save, this icon here, it's going to give you some options, right? So I've got mine set to basically be on my desktop. I've disabled OneDrive from my Word documents. So let's just say I want to put this on my desktop, nice and easy. I can go test 1, 2, 3, or I could come down, say, to my business site page here, and I could go production, I know library work, Cream Collective, horror season trailer. So test 1, 2, 3 notes. Save to my Mac. I can click in there, see where it's been saved to in its place. And then we can jump back in. So you could do Command and N, which brings up a new Finder window. So within here now, I can go to Aurora Eclipse. I've saved it to production, and it was within library work, Cream Collective. There's my notes. Again, I can drag that out, say, and pop that on the desktop. That's copied it. Notice when I dragged it out there, there's like a plus icon, green to the bottom right of that. The reason that's copied it is because we've gone from a hard drive to an internal drive on the desktop. If I was to hold down Shift and Command, you notice that that icon disappears. That is because it's going to actually move it. If I let go now, this has come up to say that there's already an item named on this desktop because we copied it over, right? Do you want to keep both, stop, or replace? Well, in this situation, I'm going to replace it because I know what the file was. Be careful with that. You may want to keep both until you're absolutely sure you know what you're up to in terms of your file structure. So play around, guys. I mean, some people, again, coming back to this dock, if we go into the Apple logo and we go System Preferences and we come back up to dock, some people, because they're crazy in my mind, joking, you can customize your Mac however you want. They want it on the left. So they want their dock. It's because I've got multiple screens. Because I've got two screens, it's trying to take me over to the other screen. Let's go to the right. Some people like their dock on the right-hand side there. It just makes sense for their workflow. I like it on the bottom, but that's something you can completely customize, right? If you find that your display settings are not great in terms of being able to see them, which is something I struggle with now, my eyesight's starting to not be as great as it was, especially with these high resolution screens, you can come into the display, you can go to display settings, and then you can choose how you perhaps want it to look. So if you want larger text or more space, you can click on these different options and it will make the text and the screen larger, right? So this is 1920 1080. This is 2K essentially at 2560 1440. Then we go all the way up to the sort of 4K resolutions, which I find a little bit too small. So I've gone kind of in the middle ground. That's something that can help you out significantly. Do remember that with a Mac, if you've come over from Windows, it doesn't like it when you just start pulling your hard drives out or pulling your memory sticks out. It wants you to unmount them. So if we right click, say, on this hard drive, there's the option to eject the drive. If you go to Finder, so again, we can use the dock. It's always this kind of happy looking guy. Or you can go Command and N. All your kind of external drives will live here. Then you can just click this button here under locations to eject that drive. Normally when I'm working, I've got 7 or 8 drives connected for different sample libraries. So this looks a little bit more kind of full on, so to speak. But I've just got my work drive in now because that's the only thing I'm working on. Yeah, it's very much it's very customizable, the Mac. You know, if you didn't want, if I take that stacks off there, see my desktop now just looks like a mess. It's got stuff all over the place. That's because I've been very unorganized lately. That's because stacks is off. If I right click on the screen and turn stacks on, it moves everything into folders, aka screenshots, PDF documents, images, documents, etc. In a way, it kind of like enables procrastination of file management and enables a bit of laziness, but it just keeps my brain at bay, so to speak. You can go get info on your desktop even, and that will tell you how much junk is living on your desktop. For me, it's 20 gigabytes, so I do need to sort that out. There's a lot of stuff going on there. Right-clicking again, view options, potentially a useful thing for you guys, because you can then choose how big you want. Let's say I zoom in a little bit here. Say I want my icon size to be bigger. You can just do that, right, by dragging this on. But again, I like my icons to be fairly small, 44, 44. You can change the grid spacing, so where they live on the grid. Again, I like it relatively big, so I can fit longer words without it truncating. Text size you can change if you want the text size to be bigger, or if you want the text size to be smaller. Show item info will bring up this new menu underneath it. So basically, for hard drive, say it's telling me that I nearly need to buy a new hard drive. Thanks for that. How many items are there for stacks? How long these podcast clips are. Again, can be useful. I turn it off because I'm not interested in it. And icon preview, that's basically, do you want to see almost like a thumbnail of the photograph or the video or not? Do you want to just see the items? To be honest, I actually quite like just seeing the items. And you can stack by kind, you can stack by shared by, you can stack by when you last opened it, when you last modified it. You can sort it by when you added it, by its name. Very, very customizable again, right? So I do hope that that was, you know, vaguely useful, so to speak. Play around with it. Shout if you need any additional help, or if you've got anything else to add, please do put it in the comments. And yeah, welcome to the Mac. It has changed a fair bit over the years, which is why I wanted to just do this updated version with Monterey, because there are some key new features in this operating system that weren't in prior operating systems. So I wanted to keep you guys up to date. Cool. I will see you very, very soon. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.